So this is all about robust regression. So uh, and outlier detection. So we'll start from simple, very basic. One is, so you have a data. Let's say this is x-axis and this is y-axis, and we have some data just scattered around here and there. So the job is to fit line, okay, so that the vertical distances, if you square the distance squared, so let us say this is EI, okay, so this is YI and this is the uh, least squares fit mm, for this data. So this was what was done by Gauss, correct? So this is linear least squares. Uh, so now the problem is that if you have a outlier, so probably I will show an outlier by a star. Okay, so this is an outlier which is not following the trend of this data. Sakit, it is audible, right?
Yes, yes, audible, audible.
Okay, so now let's say initially we had this line, this data without the star, which is an outlier. Now we have the star. So based on the location of this outlier, the let's say the fitted line, its slope keeps on changing, right? So if this is the outlier, let's say a double outlier, okay? I'm just introducing one outlier at a time. So if I first introduce, say just the one star, probably the line might go something like this. Okay, this is for this, and probably if I introduce a second outlier, then the line might uh, tilt further. Intuitive, right?
Right.
So the problem is now how will you find out if there's an outlier? Because we want to detect an outlier. So you cannot look into this error, that is EI, to detect outliers. So let's say this is the error. If I have to change this. Now let me take green ink pen. Okay, so you see that the error with this two outliers. Okay, so this is called as a residual or the error between the fitted line and the data point. Okay. Uh, okay. So just by looking at these residuals, you cannot make out which is the outlier, because now you see that the residual for this first outlier and the second outlier are very less. On the other hand, the residual for the other points are high. So you cannot make out which is the outlier. So this is the problem with linear least squares fit. Okay, so outliers can be of two types, at least from this graph. One is outlying in y direction. Okay, so this can be one type of an outlier. The other type of an outlier is outlying in x direction, because usually we will have data as data will be something like this: x1, y1, x2, y2, so on and so forth, right? So you must have got this data uh, through some experiment. And why only think that the outlier be in only the y direction? It can also happen in x2 direction because of some calculation error or some recording error. So outliers can be in both directions. So this is the current scenario. So now let us look into what is known as a leverage point. Okay. So you call a point xk comma yk as a leverage point. Okay. If uh, if xk lies away from the bulk of the data. Okay. So for example, let's say we extended this line. Okay. This was the original data uh, that we have without outliers, and probably we might have some point here. Okay. These blue points. So these are known as leverage points, or it can be somewhere here also. Okay. Very far away. Uh, so this is also a leverage point. Okay. So the basic criteria is that xk lies away from the bulk of the data. Okay. It doesn't say that yk lies away from the bulk of the data, but we can fill there. So you see that the bulk of yk is somewhere here. So actually I cannot take this as, can I take that? Yeah, it doesn't matter. So you see that the bulk of data is in this region of y-axis, right? So I'm not worried about what y coordinate is telling me, but only thing that I want is that the x coordinate, that is this part, is away from my bulk of the data. So such a point is known as leverage point. This is fine, right? The definition.
Yes.
Okay, so now, okay, so what is the implication of this leverage point? So it has a potential. So let me say potential to affect regression coefficients. To affect the regression coefficients. Because the model, the regression model that you have is something like this. Regression model is y is say theta I x I, sorry, theta j x I j. Okay, j ranging from 1 to say p. Okay, plus you can have some constant theta 0. Okay, so these are my coefficients theta j ranging from j is equal to 1 to p, sorry, 0 to p are my regression coefficients. Okay,
Why
so
I, right?
yeah, correct. YI. Okay, so this is my model for regression, at least linear regression. The implication of the definition of leverage point is that it has potential to affect the regression coefficients because it is away from the bulk of the data. Okay. So this is
Right.
the implication of leverage point. Okay. So now you have to be careful. Your outliers can be because of, as we have seen, because of two analytical reasons. One is because of outlying in y direction or x direction. So this tilting of this line can happen either because of outliers in y direction or x direction. You cannot say because of exactly this type of an outlier you are having a tilt. Okay, it can happen in any case, in any of these cases. Okay.
Right. So you are saying that the leverage point will act like a fulcrum kind of thing. It will
Correct.
change the slope.
Correct. Correct.
Right. Okay. Okay.
So, but this definition is very important. Okay, we'll see why this definition is important in some time, at least from a historical perspective. So now this whatever I have shown you here on the picture is sort of two-dimensional picture where you have only one explanatory variable. So let me call this as explanatory variables. Whatever you have here as explanatory variable, because they are explaining the data. So it is known as explanatory variables. And this guy is known as the response variable. So you see that even in just two-dimensional case where p is equal to 1, you see that you are not able to make out where the outlier is or who or which point is the outlier just by making or seeing this residuals using least squares. Now this case will be more severe in multi-dimensions. Let's say when this p is greater than 1. Okay, so finding outliers is more difficult. Okay, more difficult when p is greater than 2. Okay, greater than or equal to 2. So let us just see why. Okay, so usually when you do this exploratory data analysis or whatever in machine learning, so you take some variables at a time and then try to do some analysis. Okay, so that is one thing that you try to do. So let's draw a two-dimensional plot. Okay, so here I'm not drawing the response variable. I'm just taking a two-dimensional example, okay, where I'm just showing you x1 and x2. Or if I want to be precise, there are two coordinates, so x I1 and x I2. Okay, so maybe my outliers are somewhere here. Okay, let me see. These are my outliers. Your bulk of the data. Now, I am trying to say that it is more difficult because usually by if you're a data scientist, your intuition is when you are not able to analyze or visualize, at least in olden days. Now we have sophisticated tools, but in olden days, what they used to do was take one explanatory variable or two explanatory variables and do some analysis and do some inference. Okay, it is like a divide and conquer method instead of doing some sort of a multiple regression and analyzing, visualizing it, because you cannot visualize more than 3 dimensions. So what they used to do was take some lower dimensions. Okay, so now the problem is if you try to analyze this outlier or find out this outlier just by observing one dimension. Okay, so you will not be able to do that. Okay, so see here, the stretch of this first variable is from here to here, right? On the bottom. Similarly, the stretch of the second variable on the xi2 axis. So you see that if you just look into or just project all the data onto xi1 and xi2 axis, you will not be able to see any outliers, because you see that this projection of this outlier is falling on almost the same range, okay, within the same range, right? So you will not be able to. First of all, two dimensions is itself a big challenge once you do least squares fit. And now, if you look into this picture, it is highly impossible if you go to higher dimensions. So this is the problem that we have. So people have come with two types of solutions to find out outliers. So one is known as regression diagnostics, and the other one is robust regression. So two solutions. Okay, one is robust regression, which we'll be dealing with, and the other one is regression diagnostics. Okay, so what is robust regression doing? Let me call it as RR and RD. So what is robust regression doing? It's something like a least squares fit. So, but there'll be some minor changes or so it takes into account the whole of data. Okay, regression made on uh, complete data, complete data set. Okay, and then then you pick outliers based on residuals. In least squares, you are not able to pick or find out outliers just based on residuals. But here you will see that if you do something known as what is that? Least median squares, okay, not least squares, okay, least median squares, then most probably your fit will be something like this, or maybe something like this. So this is maybe something like least median square. Okay, we'll come to that. What is least median square? But the point that I want to make clear here is, if you use a least median square and take out the residuals, okay, then you can make out that there's an outlier. That these two guys are outliers. You can make out that. Okay? So this is something which is known as. I mean, this type of method is known as robust regression. There are many robust regressors. So this is one philosophy. That is, you do the analysis on the complete data set and then try to pick outliers based on residuals. The other philosophy is come up with with uh, metrics to remove outliers in the beginning. Outliers in the beginning itself. Okay? And then fit the data, then fit the curve for the data. Okay, so it is something inverse of robust regression. Okay, so these are the two methods that we have as of now, two broad methods. So here, why we are not using this regression diagnostics is, one thing is that it is computationally bad. Okay? Computationally, expensive. So we will not go for this, at least as of now. Okay, to robust diagnostics, and only good understanding has been developed when you have only one outlier. Okay, so there is nothing like hard and hardbound and good theory for cases where you have more than one outliers. So that is the downside of RD, regression diagnostics. So these are the two broad ways in which we have to deal with outlier detection in general in statistics. Okay, so now let's come to this breakdown point, which is breakdown point. So there are at least two versions of this. One is something like the omega FP sort of a treatment, where you take soup and inf and all those things, and that is some sort of asymptotic treatment. But we are not worried about that, because usually we'll be having some finite size data. Okay? Unless it is those such treatments. Okay? So that asymptotic treatment was given by Hampel. And then later what you can call as finite sample version was given by Donoghue and Huber. So which is what we will be interested in. So this is one sort of a metric. There are many other metrics. So how do I define that? So let Z be all these pairs, okay? Xi comma yi. Let's say I is equal to 1 to n. So there are n points or n samples, and let's say t is the regression estimator, okay, or the function that we are. So in least squares, it is nothing but the straight line that we are trying to fit. So in general, it can be anything like least median squares estimator. So what we want is we want to find out some parameters based on this input data, which is nothing but this, okay, which is the estimated parameter. It can be a vector also. In the most general case, estimated parameter. So it is the regression estimator. Okay, now let us corrupt these samples. This is a corrupted version, okay, of data, which is arbitrarily corrupted, okay, corrupted version of data by replacing any, the word any is important, and any m, any, so far it is fine, right? There are no doubts.
Yes, yes, it's good.
So by replacing any m data points. Okay. The other important thing that you have to note here is arbitrarily. Otherwise, so what I meant to say was we are not putting any restriction on the distribution of these replaced data points. Okay. So let me make it clear. No restriction on their distribution. Okay, because we are worried about robustness. That would be a natural choice. So now let us look into this bias term, which is function of m and t and z, which is given by the only thing that we have is soup. So soup is nothing but something like max. Okay? So soup is nothing but some sort of a distance measure between these two estimators. Okay, so this might give you some value of theta cap, and this might give you theta cap dash. So this is known as the bias. So how do we define the breakdown point? Okay. So we say that if bias is infinity, okay, if bias is infinity, then estimator breaks down. So this is the terminology to be rigorous. Okay. So if bias is infinity, then estimator breaks down. And how do we define the breakdown point? We call breakdown point as this quantity epsilon in star p comma z, which is minimum of m by n. So this is number of replaced points, if you remember, and this is number of total points. Okay, m by n such that bias is infinity. Okay, so it is the minimum sort of ratio of this minimum value of this ratio. So it is like the minimum ratio of or percentage of the total data points that is required for the bias to become infinity. So this is known as breakdown point. A finite for finite sample version. This is clear?
So, yeah, so when you say corrupted, they are corrupted by replacing the replacement value is infinity, right?
No. You can replace them by any data points. Okay. So
Okay.
be careful.
Okay, yeah. So then why do we get infinity as that answer? That is why I was.
Okay. So it can so happen that, for example, if you go back here, let's say I might replace some of these data points by these red data points by some other points on here, okay, on the extreme left, so that my line is a vertical line. Okay, did you get this point? So it might so
Okay.
happen that I can replace one point, just one point, and it might so turn out that the least median square is the LS least square fit is the 90-degree line. Okay.
Okay.
So now, if you are measuring the theta of this line or tan theta, it can be infinity. I mean, it depends on how what. So there are two parameters that come here. One is this measure, that is this norm. Okay, norm is important. What norm you are using? So far, it doesn't
Okay.
mention any norm. Okay. So in general, this theta, one of these values might turn out to be infinity.
Correct. And then infinity is because of
Replacement.
that line becoming
Correct.
vertical, so
Here,
to say.
yes. Or to just make it more simpler, let's say these are the points, okay? These are the points that I have. Now I put one point at infinity. So I will replace this point and put one point at infinity. So the actual estimation that we were trying to do was that of mean. Okay. Now, so let's say this mean was something like 0, okay? -1, -2, 1, 2. By now, just replacing this one point by infinity, our t of z infinity, sorry, t of z dash became infinity.
Right.
Makes sense? So now, this t
Yes.
of z and this is infinity. Even if you take L1 norm or whatever norm you take, the L2 or LP or whatever, unless you go to L infinity.
Uh, Right. So because you have not specified how
Correct.
many points will be replaced with what they can be replaced with.
Correct.
I can essentially say that they can be replaced by infinity also. It is also fair game.
Yes. It's a
So
fair
the
game.
worst case is when I get infinity.
Yes, correct. You are right.
Great. Great. Okay.
So this is one more catch that you can replace by infinity also. You can replace by any so-called extended real number. It can be minus infinity, plus infinity, any finite number, rational, anything. That is.
Right.
Now you see that if you were trying to say if your estimator was that of a median, by just replacing either any one point by infinity or minus infinity, the median will more or less remain same. It will shift slightly. So this will not be infinity. You got it right.
Yes. Great.
So in
Uh,
this case, it will not be infinity. Why I gave you this example is just because one of your data points is replaced by infinity, this need not be infinity.
yes.
Yes.
True.
So you have to be careful. Okay. So first point is that if you have to recap this again, one is any m data points. There is no condition on which data point you are trying to replace, and by whether you are replacing in x direction or y direction, all those things don't matter. Where you are perturbing it doesn't matter. And secondly, there is nothing like distribution on the replace points. And then you have this norm coming into picture. And the fourth point is that whatever you replace can be infinity also. And still you might get non-infinity sort of a difference in the estimate. Four simple points that have to be taken into account. So now just going ahead with this example. So now if you try to calculate the breakdown point, okay, of let's say mean estimator. So what is the breakdown point? It is m is 1, okay, because even if I make one point as infinity or minus infinity, it will become infinity, right? So for me, it is 1 by n. Clear?
Right, right,
This epsilon n star is 1 by n. This is epsilon.
right,
Okay. So usually what they say is they take this n tending to infinity and they say that the breakdown point is 0%. That is the asymptotic question that we can say without going to Hampel's definition, because that will be more beating around the bush. Okay. So similarly, when you talk about breakdown point of the median, you can show that, or you can try out finding what is the breakdown point. So you have to replace exactly half or one more than half samples to push this difference, that is t of z minus t z dash, to infinity. Okay, so it will be more or less 50% breakdown point. Is that
right.
clear?
Yes, yes.
So median is 50% because of this argument. The minimum number of points that you have to replace by infinity so that this whole metric becomes infinity is 50%, or maybe it depends on how many number of points. It can be one more than that. But asymptotically, as you take this into a large number, it will become 50%. Okay. So this much is clear.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So this is one thing that we have when we talk about robust estimation. Okay. So now you see that for least squares, uh, which is, when I say least squares, it means linear only. So you can easily show that BD is 0%. Similar to the argument that we did just now. Okay.
Right.
Similar to this argument. So it will be something like 1 by n. So if you just filter one thing, so it can become infinity. These parameters, the norm can become infinity just by putting one infinity properly. Okay, the angle and all those things will matter. So thinking in that way, you can say that it is 1 by n. So as n tends to infinity, that will be 0%. Okay. So I'll not try to derive that. Okay. I hope you are able to visualize that.
Yes, yes. True, true.
Only thing is you have to place that one point in such a way that it is the parameters are such that the norm will give you infinity. It's just the
Right.
placement
So
of
it
it.
should, yeah. So it should not be the same line, for example, as the
Correct.
rest
Correct.
of the points. Otherwise,
Yeah. Okay. So first thing that people started was with least squares. Then when they came up with this definition of breakdown point, they saw that linear least squares was giving a breakdown point of 0%. So you have to do something better. Okay. So this is one point. And second thing is this leverage point. Okay. So one is that you can have outliers in y direction. The second thing is you can have outliers in x direction. But this outliers in x direction is a bit of a mischievous guy. Okay. So these are 2 points to be taken care of, especially the outliers in x direction, okay, and the breakdown point. So taking these two into account, someone known as Edgeworth proposed what is known as the L1 version of least squares. Okay, so this is from Edgeworth. What he proposed is L1 regression. So L1 regression is just to minimize this theta, minimize over this parameters. What you are trying to minimize is this absolute value of the residuals. Okay. So previously, LS, if you just want to see it side by side, it is nothing but Ri square, linear least squares. So the first, the reason why he proposed this was, you are having that breakdown point, assuming that you will have that breakdown point and all that outliers you are not able to detect, just because of the square effect in residuals when you optimize. So that's why he took this absolute value of the residual. So that was his uh, thought behind proposing this. So this is known by the name L1 regression. Sometimes machine learning people they have this squared error function, and in many of the blocks you see that it is you can also take L1 norm, and that reduces the what to say, the magnitude of these theta 1, theta 2, so on and so forth. So that is known as a regularization term. Anyway, but people don't believe that. I mean, the point that I wanted to make here is that people don't know why is this L1 regression coming into picture. It is basically from this robust statistics field, because nowadays no one use this. No one will use this L1 regression. Okay, mathematically it is not that tractable. Okay. So there were some problems with this estimator also. So one is that okay, this will give you median. Okay, okay, this will give you the median as the output in one-dimensional case. In one-dimensional case. But in more than one dimensions, you don't have the concept of median. You will have multiple solutions. Okay, so if you don't understand what is this median, you will have a doubt now. So I will clarify this later. So roughly it will give you a sort of median. Okay. But if you go to more than one dimensions, what is found is that it will have multiple solutions, which means that you don't get a unique solution like you get in one-dimensional case. So roughly or intuitively, what I wanted to say is that you will end up with this least median square. Okay. If you do L1 sort of a regression in one-dimensional case, that is in this scenario. But if you try to do the same thing in higher dimensions, you will not get least median square. Okay, because the notion of median is not at all there. So far, is it fine?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'll come back to this median business sometime later. I'll just go
Okay.
through the different types of estimators we have and land up to those estimators that we have till day, and then we'll get back and concentrate only on the latest best estimators that we know. That is my idea as of now. Okay, so what about BD point? Breakdown point for this is 50% in one-dimensional case, that is p is equal to 1. Okay, in this case. But what about the multi-dimensional case? Again, it is 0% when p is not equal to 2. Okay. But there is one good news about this. This L1 regressor makes you see outliers in y direction. That is one advantage. And intuitively, you can see that if you are using least median squares, you can easily chalk out where the outliers lie, obviously. Okay, which I will make obvious in some time, maybe in the next meeting. So one advantage is, this is one advantage that we have. Even though the breakdown point is 0%, when you do linear regression, you can see outliers in y direction, but not in x direction. So this is the downside of it. Okay, so now at this stage comes this Huber with M estimators. These are more general class of estimators given by Huber. Okay. So what he said was, instead of all this Ri square and mod Ri, we'll replace Ri square by some rho Ri. So his minimization or optimization problem is theta over, as usual, you have a rho of Ri. Ri is the residual again. So just to get back and see, for least squares, rho of Ri is what? Ri square. For L1 regression, it is rho of Ri is mod Ri. Fine. So what he put some condition on this function rho. So this must be symmetric. Why symmetric? Because even if you get some positive residual or negative residual of the same magnitude, you must finally end up with the same sort of cost function. That is the forethought. Yeah. With minimum at Ri is equal to 0. So something like this, some symmetric function, or maybe something like this also, something like this. Okay. So now, obviously, when you have such cost functions, what to do is you derive, differentiate this whole thing, right? Summation rho of I, correct? Differentiate this rho of Ri to evaluate the optimal point or the minimum point according to our calculus fundamentals. So by differentiating rho of Ri is equal to 1 to n with respect to what? With respect to theta i's or theta j's. Okay. So what you get is you have to equate to 0. So by doing this, you get a set of equations. Okay. This is a vector, this is a scalar, I is equal to 1 to n, and this is 0. Okay, so where psi is nothing but derivative of rho. Okay, we can say j. Okay. So this is what you are going to get. So how do I derive this? I will not derive this, but I will just give you an idea of what is happening. So Ra is nothing but yi minus sigma theta j xij, right? The whole square summation. Is it this? Yeah. So just a minute. Yeah, only this much. Yeah. So this is the array. So if you now plugging these things in this above equation, you'll get this equation. Okay, so here I might have to be clear. So this is a system of three equations. Okay, one for each component of xi. So you have to be careful. Xi is nothing but xi1, xi2, so on until the xi. Okay, so today we'll stop at this point. Okay. Any doubt till now?
No,